especially with something like batteries, there's so much information you could give to people. And so it's kind of a game of trial and error to figure out what do people actually need to know? What will help them actually make a decision that's going to impact their lives and make them feel like they have that knowledge that they need to feel empowered, but without bogging them down in the weeds.
Hey, Jeannie.
Yeah, Brew?
Who's our guest on the Energy Nerd Show today?
Today we have Maisy Rohrer from Climable. Hey, Maisy.
Hi, Maisy.
Hello. Hi. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome. So glad you're here. Per usual, I would love to hear what you are working on in detail. But first, you want to talk a little bit about your organization and your role there?
Absolutely. So I work with a nonprofit called Climable. Energy Nerd Show listeners and watchers may know of it. We are a small nonprofit based in Cambridge, started by Jeannie, 12 years ago now? And we work to make climate science and clean energy understandable and actionable for all.
Wonderful. I'm so glad you're there. I'm so glad you're here. A lot has changed, and the clients and the relationships kind of keep coming in. And I feel like you're working on something really exciting and important right now. And I just want everyone to know about it. Can you talk about Boston?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the really cool thing about being part of the organization now is seeing the different ways that the work has blossomed. This project with the city of Boston is kind of the perfect Climable project, I would say. It is creating some educational materials on battery storage, which is a not necessarily new technology, but a tougher one for people in the general public to understand. And so the city wants to create a suite of educational materials to help people get to know the different nuances that are important to understand if you're going to be living near a facility or if you want to have one in your home, and all of the different considerations that go into that.
Okay. Well, we know battery storage is so essential for grid stability, for deploying renewables in the ways that we need them. And so I think that is really core to the mission of Climable.
Yeah.
When we think about, these are things that everyone needs to know about. And then you have the macro level, but then when you get down to the personal level, what does it really take for people or even communities to decide together how they relate to this technology?
Yeah, I think there are so many different considerations that people have of their own, from their own perceptions and knowledge of these, or from things that they're hearing as a project gets proposed to them. And it depends on the type of battery they're interested in or they're hearing about. But at a community level, I think the things that people really want to focus on is, of course, safety. That's always going to be number one, especially with something that's newer or unfamiliar. And then beyond that, what are the benefits to them? How is this going to change their daily life? Is it going to help them? Hopefully it won't hurt them. I think those are the main things people are concerned about.
So are batteries dangerous?
People think about this a lot, and they can be. There's been some failures. We hear about it in the news, but generally, no. They are really strictly regulated. They're working really hard at an international and national level on the codes, the permitting, and fire response. So like the firefighters' strategy to any fires that could happen. But the technology is really well tested. The industry does not want it to be unsafe. They want to sell them. So, and they want people to be safe. It's an important technology.
So what is the kind of message and the messaging that you're developing for Boston for people to communicate about this?
Yeah. So my goal is not really to have a message per se, but to create just a really neutral set of materials so people can make their own decisions. I believe this, and I think Climable as a whole believes this, that, information is power, knowledge is power. And so being able to give really neutral, objective facts that are well-researched is my goal. And I hope the Boston folks agree, because that's what they're going to get. And I think through that, by having like a really great set of materials that people can reference, it'll help them cut through some of the difficult research on their own. There's a lot of information out there about batteries. Some of it's misinformation, some of it's just outdated. So I want to make sure that folks have like an accurate set of information to find.
I know with other Climable projects, part of the plain language and communicating is not limiting yourselves to English. Is that a factor here?
Hopefully in the future, that's kind of up to the city of Boston. Right now, we're focusing on just getting the materials developed, so starting in English, because that's what I speak. And then we'll work with the city of Boston to decide if that is something that they can do. Climable won't necessarily be doing that, but we will definitely help, decide which languages it's important to translate to. Hopefully all of the main ones in Boston. Yeah, that's definitely something that's important to Climable.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of what goes into deciding what is the right information and how and how do you figure out how to present it in a way that's going to be well received?
Yeah, this is a really tough part of it. Especially with something like batteries, there's so much information you could give to people, and so it's kind of a game of trial and error to figure out what do people actually need to know, what will help them actually make a decision that's going to impact their lives, and make them feel like they have that knowledge that they need to feel empowered, but without bogging them down in the weeds. I really like to get into the weeds. I think folks listening to this show probably do. I know you both do. But not everybody has that time, and it's not always relevant or helpful if they're just going to give public comment.
Right. So how do you sift through it? It feels like there's too much information and it's kind of up to you to decide.
Yeah. I mean, so I first try and think about it from like, okay, if this is my mom, what does she need to know? Or my grandma? Well, she would probably just say no to things. But my mom really wants to give well-informed feedback to people. She wants to know the right things and be able to make a decision. So I kind of think of it from her perspective. And then I've been talking to a lot of people. I've been talking to different people that are familiar with battery storage, familiar with our communities that do engagement. Like our various partners. I've been talking to people, Green Roots, and some folks at MIT that do this kind of work. Yeah, so just trying to figure out, what have they already heard? What are people already asking about? And then from there, we'll do a back and forth with the city.
Okay.
Figure out what they need.
It seems to me like there's a local element to, particular, where are people in Boston? What kind of houses do they live in? What's going on with batteries and the distribution grid and so on. But so much of this would be relevant to like every other city in America, for example, or the world. I mean, is this something you want other cities to copy, or should they hire Climable to help them? Or what are the next steps after Boston?
I think that'd be great. I think why reinvent the wheel, first of all? So if this is something a different city wants, come to us. I think some of the information I'm putting together will be specific to Boston. We're pretty unique in the fact that like all of our buildings are really old and the way our streets are designed. So some of the information will be pretty specific. So it can't translate to New York, for example, or Chicago. But a lot of it can. So why reinvent that? And then if you want more specifics, we can do that.
Or if we're across the river in Cambridge, like where we are right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, should be transferable.
I think so.
And
I think it's important to transfer it.
I really do too. I mean, kudos to the city of Boston, for wanting to get this information out there, respecting communities and figuring out the Climable's the best one to do that. I'm wondering if you have met anyone who actually has seen a battery, like even knows, I mean, other than the professionals, like does anyone live near a battery that they that you know of, or like how are you finding some kind of public non-technical insights?
Yeah, I think for the most part, people have either seen or heard about home level, like the home scale batteries. So like a Tesla wall that they might put up in their garage.
Mm-hmm.
Those are slightly more common. People around here haven't had the opportunity to see, these bigger multi-megawatt storage systems that I think the city of Boston eventually wants. And so I haven't really met many people that have said like, yeah, I've seen these and I have X, Y, and Z opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But I've read a lot of online messaging boards, which is, take it with a grain of salt type of information, but just to get a sense of what people that live in areas that do have storage, how are they feeling? What are the main messagings about that? And there are facilities in Massachusetts that are either close to being operational or operating already. And so my hope is to try and find some folks that are willing to talk about what it's like to live near them.
Cool.
Nerd show field trip.
Yeah, right? It could be really cool.
Going on the road. That'd be great. So has the city shared with you how they plan to use this information?
So for now, they're thinking that a lot of this information will be used during public engagement. So if they're proposing a project and they are having public comment period, they might do some educational sessions ahead of time to help people understand. And so it'll be a lot of slides, a lot of question and answering, maybe some flyers and one-pagers. Certain materials might also live online, and then people will be able to find out who to contact at the city. So if they have more questions, they can give them a call and they might be able to share the information again in different formats. And then in the future, we're thinking about, should this live online? Should it be somewhere else accessible for folks, like printed out and left at like libraries or somewhere? We're kind of exploring that as we go to see what the community wants.
That's a great idea. Have you talked with battery developers? Like they must be interested in having the image of batteries improve.
Yeah, I've talked to a few. I've been pretty careful about that because I want to make sure that everything's factual and not, swayed one way or the other. But they definitely want to make sure that people have the facts. They definitely want people to know that they're doing their due diligence to make their systems as safe as possible. Every system might be slightly different depending on how they have their different modular setups or what size and scales they're working with. So some of it's a little bit nuanced, but for the most part, they just agree that the public needs as much information as possible to help them, understand what these systems are and hopefully have a good view of them.
Well, I know it helps me when I'm kind of asked to put up with something or do something. It really helps me to understand why it's important. So is that part of the campaign or part of the information? Like, how do batteries help us?
Absolutely. The city of Boston and the state of Massachusetts have energy goals, clean energy goals. They want to decarbonize the grid. Specifically in Boston, they have a net zero goal for 2050. So, we're getting rid of as much reliance on fossil fuel as possible. And that's going to require storage. They have to meet that goal. It's a legal requirement for them now that's set in law. And so this material, while being a tool for the public to use and make their own decisions on, is also a way to communicate that battery storage does have a lot of benefits that we need in the future. And I think a lot of the city and a lot of Massachusetts wants a clean grid. They want that just transition. So, once they understand, I think, all of the different components of a battery storage system, they'll be able to understand those benefits and hopefully see that they're both, the community level or the state level benefits as well as personal.
I'm glad to hear it because it does take a lot to meet a big goal like that. I remember when Michelle Wu was campaigning the first time, she was so keen on the electric school buses. And I think she said then that each bus would save the city $100,000 over time. So it leads me to wonder, is the battery information that you're gathering, is it for all kinds of batteries? Because I would think if City of Boston people know their kids are getting on a school bus that runs on a battery, they're going to be concerned about safety.
Yeah, so we're not looking into the vehicle batteries quite yet. That might be in the future, hopefully, Boston.
Yeah.
This is mostly stationary, so ones that would be at your home, outside of your large building, or on its own development for the, the grid level support.
Okay, good to know.
There are some differences between like the vehicular batteries and stationary that just might get cloudy if it's all put together in one.
Yeah, I'm glad they're keeping it simple.
Yeah. The only other thing I'd want to share is that this work is really important for all kinds of clean energy development and centering the community. While we all can agree that a clean energy grid is really important, it's really extra important to make sure that community members are involved in the process and not just, notified and given a chance to send some emails or maybe make a statement, but centered in that co-development process, and so that they can really voice what their community needs and what they don't need. And to make sure that siting is equitable. I think that is key to not reproducing harms from our energy system of the past.
Really huge issue. Yeah. Thank you. And if people wanted to support Climable, how would they go about that?
There are many ways to support us. Of course, as a nonprofit, we're always looking for some donations or in-kind support. But if you're interested in volunteering with us or just chatting, you can email me at maisy@climable.org or go onto our website, climable.org, and you can find out all the information about making a donation or volunteering on the website.
Excellent.
Great. Thanks for being on the show, Maisy.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. It's awesome.